Welcome to the Meeting of the Minds debate on whether Black people are the source of their own destruction. My name is Cassandra Waters, as she mentioned, a sophomore history major. That was a small introduction before I get into my case. But what I'm going to do is just give you my case plain out and simple. Now it's my duty as the affirmative to set the parameters for the case. The parameters are the definitions and the weighing mechanism for the case. The definitions will define all words within the resolution, and the weighing mechanism will set parameters for judging. So it's a key phrase in which all judges should consider when making their decision. All right, I'm going to start off with our definitions. This house believes that Black people are the source of their own destruction. Black people being defined as those African Americans or Black Americans who traveled here by slavery and not of choice. Source being a person, place, or thing in which something comes to be obtained. What is being obtained today that brings me to destruction. Destruction is a characteristic that causes, or that characteristic that a person will obtain in this debate, but destruction will be the cause of someone's ruin. Now, our weighing mechanism for the debate is change versus status quo. All judges and adjudicators, you must consider this when I deliver my case and when the negative delivers their case. I have 5 contingents for you today, very, very powerful contingents, so I need to listen closely. Contingent number 1, in order to figure out this person, place, or thing that came to be our destruction, the destruction of us Black people in America today, we must consider the history. That's my contingent number 1, history. My subpoint would be the releasing of the slaves. So once these slaves were released and they gained their liberation, some decided to move up north for job opportunities and others decided to remain in the status quo, which was work for the master and maybe gain pay this time. The status quo was to stay comfortable because master gave you sleeps, he gave you eats. But up north was a totally different game. So let's start with the history of when once these Black people from slavery started building their own businesses and having their own hotels and transit stations, that took a certain perseverance, right? And I know my opponent just might bring up a topic of some Willie Lynch syndrome that is impeded through slavery. I know it's coming. So I must say this to that. Was this Willie Lynch syndrome under repression? Like, was this Willie Lynch syndrome in remission during the times when these Black people chose to move north and get jobs? Were this Willie Lynch syndrome in remission when the Civil Rights Act was impeded upon this great country? Let's think about the history where the time and time again Black people have rose and we wasn't using excuses like some kind of syndrome, like someone else impeded your mind with such monotonous as to hate your brother, your kin, or your elders, or the one of a fairer skin. So that moves me to my second contention, is we have opportunities now. So just like in that Civil Rights Act that I just mentioned, that once we gained access to education, we utilized it. We became doctors and lawyers, and we had fulfilled families. You see, that's with both parents in the household, in case you were wondering. We had that. So was any of these syndromes or people present at the time when we were together and communal. It's a bunch that educational opportunity was definitely subpoint A, but subpoint B is community programs and outreach. See, our community has put together organizations that benefit us to the utmost. It's just little things like Little League and the YMCA and anything that you can get your children involved in to keep them off the streets, to keep them out of negativity. You know, but why aren't we participating more and more in those? We're participating more and more in what infiltrates our own people and exploit our own people. The subpoint C of abundance of opportunity is scholarship. We all have access to this education, and we all have the opportunity to be a scholar. How many of us out of high school take that scholarship? My contingent number 3 would be sellouts. Sellouts/media. Now, subpoint A in these sellouts is black politicians who lack communalism. Come on, black politicians who don't understand the urgency to get our black businesses running and the attention that it needs and cleaning up streets. Like, why, when you have this platform, have you sold out to your own people? Our subpoint B is our shuckers and jivers. That is those who use their platform for their own financial gain. Shucking and jiving and anything for $1. You do something. I'm trying to, it's panhandling. It's panhandling each other. Taking each other's money and the opposers or oppressors' money just for some entertainment and financial gain. That can come in, I'll get to you when I get after this contention. That can come in many different faces, such as reality TV. We are portraying ourselves as this is my reality, but how much positivity are you putting out there? What can we make to be our reality, to change our reality? None of that is displayed on TV. My subpoint C is informants. Now, let's not. I gotta be careful with my word choice on this one. I gotta be careful with my word choice on this one, because these people that participate and help our government, our government exploit us indecently. Like, we have organizations that have members that don't even belong. Same. Okay.
Earlier you said, as pertains to scholarship, you said that any black person has an opportunity to scholarship. So is that including impoverished and minorities? Are you saying that even the impoverished black people have an opportunity to scholarship?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Thank you. My name is Terrence Mack. I'm a graduating senior political science major here at the illustrious Spelman University, home of the proud and prestigious Panthers, and I am glad to serve as your leader of opposition tonight. Before I go into my time, I would like to start off by letting you know that I'm going to first start off by negating every single point my opponent just stated, and then I'm going to go into my contentions as to why black people are not the source of their own destruction. And I'm gonna start now. So her contention 1 was history, and she really didn't bring up anything that at all answered the question, why are black people the source of their own destruction? The main point of her entire contention was that after slavery, we didn't go out to build our businesses, we didn't go out to prosper, we just went off and we went off to act like the slave master. How does my opponent just automatically just think that you can just get out of slavery and just jump right into prosperity as if that's how slavery worked? And what country has that ever worked? Did it happen in Haiti? Did it happen in Jamaica? Did it happen inside of Australia? Did it happen inside of any other area where there was a massive amount of black people that came out of slavery and just jumped straight into economic boom? That has never happened, and it never will happen. Especially when they went through centuries of oppression and centuries of reconditionment and assimilation and learning how to be Western. So how do you come out of being Western and jump right into being your own people? that my opponent totally negates the entire fact of psychology and the way psychology plays a role into this entire debate. And I'm going to get into that deeper when I get into my case. Contention number 2, we have opportunities. Just like the debate that we had earlier when it talked about if you're not rich in America, it is your fault. If you're not rich in America, it is definitely not your fault. How could you say that when there's laws out there that actually make it possible for an employer to pay a man more than they pay a woman, or pay a certain employee more than they pay another employee based on their race, or you don't know what's going through that employer's mind, especially inside of certain corporate offices such as JP Morgan, such as Sun Life, such as Wells Fargo, which have both been all been corporate executive companies that have been framed and have been sued because they have been caught not giving jobs to minorities because, quite frankly, they just don't want to. And then I asked the question. She brought up the benign comment that every African American has the equal opportunity to education. How can you tell that to little Jerome that just graduated with a 4.0? Well, homeboy don't got the money to go to Harvard, but he has the grades to get into it. But quite frankly, he don't have the money to get into it. Not every single institution has an affirmative action program, and even if they do have an affirmative action program, that affirmative action program is limited. They're not just going to invite everybody from the hood into their institution. Yes, I'll take a question.
Are you aware of Khadijah Williams?
Enlighten me.
Well, to enlighten everyone, Khadijah Williams is a young lady who endured homelessness and was still accepted into Harvard University and achieved a bachelor's degree in sociology.
I'm not going to take that question because for federal aid, if you're homeless, they cover your whole tuition.
It's cool, moderator. So just to that point, the fact, okay, I'm assuming that my opponent brought that up to prove that there are African Americans that are poor that do make it and that do achieve into institutions. But we're talking on a macro level. We're not talking micro. We're talking about, and her statement wasn't some black people have the opportunity to make it into scholarship. She said all black people have the opportunity to make it into scholarship. And the fact that you only gave me one example just proves that your entire comment is just denied. Contention number 3, we are doing this to ourselves. I'm not going to go through all the subpoints. One of the subpoints was reality TV shows. And she didn't really even go into any examples of which reality TV shows are actually being negative. She just said, look at on TV. Look at the reality TV shows. They're all negative. They're not showing you positivity. And that's not true at all. There's actually a lot of reality TV shows that are showing positivity. And then again, who are you to decide what is positive, what is negative? Maybe real is just real. So if the entire reality show is talking about this man and his baby mama, maybe that's just real. That's reality TV. That's not false advertisement. That's exactly showing you what he's going through. He got 10 baby mamas. This is his life. Now we're going to my contentions. And once again, I promise I'll stay within the Wayne mechanism. Contention number 1, history. Yes, I am going to talk about the post-traumatic slave syndrome as talked about by Dr. DeGregory. Because when these slaves that came out of slavery, there was a lot of lasting effects that lasted within the black community from it. Identity crisis. Many of the individuals that went through slavery, that's one of the reasons why many of us inside this room have European last names, European first names. Some of us can't even trace our ancestry. My family's from Jamaica. I can't even trace my own Caribbean heritage because Ancestry.com only goes back so far, and they destroyed the rest of it. Economics. It wasn't just Europeans that took over Africa. It was also the Arab invasion back in the 8th century, way before the transatlantic slave trade. And when they came in, Mansa Musa, who was the king of the Great Mali Empire in the 14th century, was the richest man on the planet at that time, worth $400 billion, which is more than any black nation's annual GDP today. And they won't tell you that because they will never tell you your history before slavery. Oh, by that, let me get into that fact. Another part of what slavery has lasted into us is self-hate. Look at everybody bleaching their skins, and look at everybody denouncing their beautiful hair and going on to different styles of hair from different countries. This all derives from what the slave master taught your ancestors, and that teaching derived down from generation to generation, and that is why we have the destruction that we have now inside the black community. But see, my opponent didn't bring up the fact that what this destruction is doing. We're arguing today that the destruction that you see now inside the black community, all the black on black violence, all the ignorance, all the I love to not know anything, all that derives from what slavery lasted into us. And another thing about history is they're rewriting our history right now. Right now inside the pyramids that talk about ancient Kemites, or Queen Ashanti, the Zulu nation, all that history, all those hieroglyphics, they're being erased as of right now inside of the pyramids. And because they're being rewritten and they're not being taught to us in a proper way, like for instance during your K-12 education, I'm pretty sure they didn't go back beyond slavery to tell you about Queen Ashanti, or they didn't go back and tell you about Anubis. They didn't go back and tell you about Obelisk. And if you ever heard about it, it was probably in a Yu-Gi-Oh card game or something. And going on, and then not only do they do that, but they also tell you about the Christopher Columbus lie. We recently just celebrated Christopher Columbus Day, and our President Obama actually did the entire event at the White House celebrating it, this lie that a white man came to America and saved a bunch of poor Native Americans who weren't doing nothing but being savages until he came along and saved them. When really he came along and did the massivest genocide of all time. I apologize. And contention number 2, it's not black people behind the entity destroying contemporary black community. Just like when she was talking about reality TV shows. Mona Scott Young, yes, let's use Love and Hip Hop as an example, because I love Love and Hip Hop and what it shows. But let's look at Mona Scott Young, and everybody says that black people are the source of no instruction because she's the one that's behind that. No, you have to be an idiot to not know that there is someone behind her with a shirt, tie, and light skin that is dictating all the things that she does, dictating all the moves that she makes, telling her, yes, you can't make this episode's a little too dry. Let's have a little more drama. Let's bring Stevie into the situation to make Jocelyn mad. Let's do this, let's do that, and it gets more time.
I'm a senior criminal justice major with a minor in biology and psychology here at Morehouse University. So my kings and queens, future doctors, lawyers, attorneys who are sitting out in the audience, thank you for coming. And to our wise men and judges, which I will be referring to you throughout this debate, thank you for coming. And to our sellouts, thank you for bringing this case and this argument. So just to give you an outline, what I'm going to do is we'll run through our contentions while negating our opponent's points. So, let's begin. I'm going to start with a quote. It says, every test in our lives makes us bitter or better. Every problem comes to break us or make us. The choice is ours, whether we become victims or victors. Now, as I reiterate our first contingent, history. Separate but equal. This law did not hinder us due to the fact there was an increase in blacks becoming educated. So we can't define separate but equal as a source of black destruction. But choosing, but being the source of your destruction is not utilizing this opportunity to get an education. That's what makes it your destruction. There was an increase in voting, and over the years, the voting rights still exist today, but we choose not to vote. Therefore, we are the source of our own destruction. Civil rights movement and Reconstruction, a time of black upliftment, where the youth and the elders got along. There was a creation of black towns. Black newspapers were created, and HBCUs were created for black education. If you chose to not utilize these opportunities for you, you are the source of your own destruction. During this time, we was consciously aware. Consciously meaning thinking. If you're able to think of something, you're able to change. Our opponent brought up the fact that it has a lot to do with psychology. But psychology also states that if you are consciously aware of something, then you are able to change it. So the fact that we was consciously aware of what Willie Lynch did during the time of Reconstruction and the Civil Rights Movement, there was no light skin versus dark skin. There was no youth against elders. So we all got along as a community. So to my kings and to my queens, uplift your kings.
To my kings, cover your queens and respect your queens, because we are the definition of our own outcomes of destruction. Which brings me to my next point. Abundance of opportunities, scholarships. This is a time for no more excuses. No longer should we sit there and say there's no more money for school when we're not taking accountability for our actions, not even sitting in front of a computer to apply for these scholarships. Don't sit there and say you can't go to school because HBCUs were created for you, so you have an obligation to choose to go. Getting to know your professors, the wise men. Going to an HBCU and not utilizing them as a resource, you're causing yourself to be the source of your own destruction. Volunteering for youth programs. You are the future educators and leaders of our black youth and our black kings and queens of our future. By not educating them, you are causing them to be the source of our future destruction. Also, we are talented individuals. Utilize your talents in music, art, math, and science. How can we sit there and say we are bad at these subjects when we are the creators of it? To give an example, Tyler Perry, a man who suffered and endured homelessness, used his gift of writing while he was on the streets to achieve greatness. He decided not to make himself the source of his own destruction. We as African American kings and queens are already great, so let's continue to grow in our greatness and not be the source of our own destruction. Also, our sellout spoke about sellouts in the media. The negative side wants to state the media or reality TV is the lack of, was the downfall of community, the downfall of the community. Back at the end of the day, you as that black person in that reality TV show has the choice to either sign that contract or not to sign that contract. By you signing that contract, you're influencing the source of your own destruction. Also, please be aware that reality TV stars makes an average of $3,000 to $5,000, while the writers and the producers of that reality TV show makes $20,000 off our calamities. So, what can you do to not be the source of your own destruction? Please take note that the average PhD holder can make around $46,500 to $140,000 depending on your field. So let us, as the first creators of education, give ourselves this status and have this degree so we can laugh at other races. That way, we won't be the source of our own destruction no longer. Which brings me to our lack of black leadership contingent that we didn't get into. Lack of black leadership. The president of Morehouse Brown calls the destruction of the HBCU Morehouse Brown, which is the first HBCU to actually be founded by an African American. And how dare we as the AUC community, how dare we as the AUC community movement of black scholars not save our brother sister institution of Morehouse Brown College. But even though there was a lack of black leadership through this president's actions, the students of Morehouse Brown College did not feel hurt. But they did not stop either, because they chose to continue their education. Why? Because they knew if they didn't, they would be the source of their own destruction. Which brings me to our last contingent, accountability. We have to choose to go to school despite our hardship. As I said earlier, Khadijah Williams, well, I won't get into that because apparently that's not a valid statement. Okay, when we are frustrated and mad and we choose to throw riots, we need to stop destroying our own countries and neighborhoods, our own towns, because that's causing us to hinder our own community. Utilize your talents. For example, Chauncey, also known as Malik from the TV show The Game, slept in his car for 30 days before he started his acting career. There's no more excuses. Despite your health conditions and other symptoms, fight through it. Toni Braxton, who suffers from breast cancer and lupus, continues to utilize her gift in singing because it is her drive and passion. Her son, who suffers from autism. Toni doesn't sit there and cry. What Toni does, she advocates and donates for autism for her son's health. She suffered from bankruptcy twice, so there's no more excuses. Media, the TV show Find Our Mission was created by a black man who suffered the loss of his son. He did not sit there and cry about it. What this black man did was utilize his gift, and he created a TV show that brought awareness to the loss of African Americans, because there's a lack of search for us in cases. Education, again, the scholarships are there. The scholarships are there, so utilize this opportunity separate but equal, like I said, during this time, it did not stop us because there was an increase in black education. So there's no more excuses. We are the source of our own destruction when it comes to hardships, calamities, and persecution. So therefore, we must take accountability for our acts. We can no longer be the source of our own destruction. Now, in my side.
I would like to thank the opposition for going up. My name is Sabrine Jolly. I'm a mass media arts major with a concentration in public relations and a minor in English, and I am proudly serving as your member of opposition, arguing the negative. Are black people the source of their own destruction? I would like to thank the honorable judges, the audience, the congregation, Prime Minister, mediator, and opposition. I would also like to thank the opposition for the little ensemble they have on today, because they are completely answering the question to tonight's debate. Are black people the source of their own destruction? And answering that, you will have to understand each component in that question. Are black people the source of their own destruction? And I would like to first define the word source. The cause of something, such as a problem, and a synonym for source is origin, where it derived from, where it came from, the root of it, the birthplace of that thing. Destruction, the action or process of causing so much damage to something that it no longer exists or cannot be repaired. Own, your own, used with a possessive to emphasize that someone or something belongs or relates to the person mentioned. Excuse me. I wanted to start off with asking this question: does destruction belong to black people? Are we the creators of this destruction that's being spoken of? That's like saying it's an entity, like it's birthed within ourselves. I would like to first off bring up the opposition's, the affirmative contention. Ms. Cassandra Waters said something about the shuckers and jivers, the people doing anything for a quick dollar. She asked the question, how much positivity are we putting out? For all of us mathematicians out here, A squared plus B squared equals C squared, right? A negative plus a positive is a negative. How can you mix something negative with a positive and expect a positive outcome? And I would like to then go into something else they were talking about. I'm just really utterly disturbed that they will come up here as Black Panthers and then come in and basically down the black community. It's time to uplift the black community. He said something about being separate but equal. That's like, for the Bible scholars, that's like being hot and cold. You're either or. You can't be lukewarm. How can you be separated but equal? That's a contradictory within itself, and I would like to first go in and reiterate our first contention, which is history. Do you come into the world knowing how to read, write, spell, or do a mathematical equation? No. Likewise, are you the source of your destruction simply because of your race, creed, or color? Destruction has no color, nor does it have a specific ethnicity from which it derives. It is merely a mindset and can be taught, and over time can become a lifestyle. Whether or not we choose to become a victim of that lifestyle is our own decision. I would like to give the example of civil rights. Imagine the scene. You are a young black male living in Oakland, California in 1966. The police are terrorizing you during random car stops and identification checks. Many of your friends live in substandard housing, and if they make it through high school, are rewarded with a trip to Vietnam. White men are maintaining control over the government and most of the businesses. Your prospects for a successful future seem bleak. I'd like to bring up the Second Amendment about the right to bear arms. When we were granted the right to bear arms during this time of the Black Panthers, what they did to disarm these Black Panthers was to give them heroin. They're giving us these things. They're basically, and I would like to first of all go back to what the Prime Minister said about slavery. Do you really think in a time period such as that back then that they would give us credit for some of the things that we created, that we invented, these innovative ideas that we created? Do you really think that they would actually say, John did this, or they did something like this. They're taking credit for the things that we're producing. I like to also bring up the fact about Emmett Till. This man was lynched, was killed, not just shot, bang, bang, but he was actually suffering. He was actually beaten, brutally beaten for winking at somebody. And you're saying that we're the source of our destruction. You're saying that the destruction is within ourselves. This stuff is over time. History repeats itself. Yes, we're not out plowing fields and picking cotton anymore. However, we have the mindset of destruction is not something that you can go pick up at the 99-cent store and oh, can I get a bottle of destruction? It's a mindset. It's something that's passed over time. It's an experience. Oh, geez. All right, and he also brought up something about black people. She said black people have roles. The ones that have roles are our Oprah Winfrey's, are our Tyler Perry's, are our Black Panthers and our civil rights activists, but I'm generalizing right now. I'm speaking generally. How many of us are actually going out doing this stuff? When Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation and we were free, do you think that we were able to call up Cousin Pookie and say, hey man, can I stay with you? I just got free from slavery. You cannot do it. It was nowhere for us to go. They deprived us from this thing. They conditioned our mind to be impoverished. And I would like to go into the second contention. It is not black people behind the entities destroying contemporary black communities. And I would like to, I honestly fail to understand how they're answering the question. They're not answering the question. I would like for them to understand, to realize the difference between being the source and feeding into the standard that society has set for us. They have set this standard for us. I see so many people on the promenade coming up to me saying, mixtape just dropped, or I'm about to become this rapper, man, check me out on YouTube, check me out on SoundCloud, or something of that sort. They condition our mind. Do you not know that this stuff was passed down? This is not something that just happened yesterday. This is not something that just happened 2 minutes ago. This is something that has been happening forever. And as a matter of fact, contention 3, the physical destruction of black communities. We speak of the Black Wall Street story. And how in June 1st, 1921, KKK came through and bombed this black Wall Street was basically a place where a bunch of black businesses were progressing, and it was basically like the Manhattan for black people, you know. They came through and bombed this. We no longer have Black Wall Street anymore. They are taking these things from us. You think, yes.
Two questions, matter of fact. Well, a statement and a question. How were we talking negative about our audience when we were telling our audience to utilize their talents? Secondly, when you speak of sourcing the media, at the end of the day, you have the choice to sign that contract or not, as stated in our argument.
Your question is?
Well, I didn't went on a tangent. I was kind of...
Okay, you said how to ask...
Yeah, how are us as black people not the source of our own destruction, when at the end of the day, it is up to us to sign those contracts for media. You're
answering the question, are we feeding into these things? You're answering the question, are we feeding into this negativity? You're not answering the question, are we the source? To be the source of something, that means it's birthed within us.
Well, let me reword the question.
Okay.
At the end of the day, who signs that contract?
At the end of the day, what happened? How are all of our mindsets? Now, contention 4, nurture over nature, and I would like to give a quote that I had written. Black people won't change until our mindset changes. Our mindset won't change until our experiences change. Our experiences won't change until the law changes, and the law won't change until history changes. History will not change, it will remain the same. We shouldn't use history as a crutch. However, we should reference history so we can look forward tomorrow with some kind of hope, so we can condition our minds to think differently, so we can get outside of this slave-bound mindset that we have been given, that has been birthed within us. We are not the source of our own destruction, and I would definitely not want my fellow
I don't even know what the definition to give to it. I would not want you all going out thinking that destruction is birthed within you when it has been passed over time. Break this mindset. And I succeed my time and highly urge that you vote the negative on today's debate.
Last debate of the semester, the AUC debate team. Thank you all for coming out, and it's been an honor being up here, sharing this with my partner. We've actually, it's our second time debating together. We win every time, and I'd like to thank our opponents for coming out as well with this great clash. We've enjoyed this debate, but being that this is the end, I think it's time for us to go into rebuttal and let everybody in this audience know why we've won this debate today. And I will start as of now. Voter number one, this entire debate, they've been off topic. All their contentions have resulted into is the fact that black people have opportunity to do better. They don't take advantage of that opportunity, and we already negated that entire point by negating their entire scholarship claim, and the fact that anybody has access to scholarship, everybody has access to do more than just athletes and music. You want to know why those individuals, as my partner just mentioned, are always on a promenade telling you about what mixtape they're dropping or why everybody wants to be a rapper? Because these are the things that we know. These are the things that black culture knows. These are the things that we feel that only we can prosper in, because these are the only things that we see ourselves in. Maybe if more children inside of the West End saw more black doctors, or saw more black lawyers, or saw more black corporate executives, or saw more black women inside of these head executive branches, that they would know that there's more to what you can do outside of high school than just do music or just do athleticism. Voter number two, their contentions fell. One of the things that they recently just said, and my partner brought up, they said the overall message here is who signs their contract. Okay, let's use Nicki Minaj as an example. Nicki Minaj does she have the decision to not do the things that she does, whether it's on her videos or how she talks about her interviews and do this and do that? Yes, at the end of the day, yes, she is an adult. But let's take into consideration what her circumstances are. You don't know how impoverished her lifestyle was before this life. If an opportunity is placed in front of you, and when you're poor, anybody that's inside this room knows when you're poor, you're willing to do anything to get out of poverty. You're willing to do anything to get a dollar bill. You're willing to do anything to satisfy your hunger. You're willing to do anything to prosper and just to get out of that situation. And then they brought up an individual, my partner already negated. They brought up a fact about this celebrity who was in the game, and they stuck inside their car, and Tyler Perry stuck inside their car until they had the opportunity to become rich. Most people can't even afford a car. So once again, you're not thinking in the terms of what the bottom levels of poverty actually look like, and what opportunities are casting out because of that. And also we dropped all the contentions. History, they brought up slavery. We dropped that point by bringing up the fact that psychologically there are a lot of lasting effects from slavery that have lasted today. The economically, identity crisis, and also the rewriting of history that's happening right now. Like I said before, many of us probably never even knew we had a history before we even came to an HBCU, and we probably never would have learned if we went to Smith College versus Clark Atlanta University. And voter number three, their entire third part was accountability. They came up here dressed as Black Panthers, representing an organization that is about Black empowerment, African American uprising, as in probably one of the most strongest and most rebellious groups that we have in Black America, that will tell you straight up, if they were in this room today, that Black people are definitely not the source of their own destruction. That's what they fought for. That's why they dressed as they did in front of these buildings, and that's why they marched, they sat in, they did demonstrations, because they wanted to prove to America that Black people aren't just not prospering because they're lazy. They're not just prospering because they're ignorant. This is a longer, more complex situation than just, oh, you're born with opportunity. Nobody's born with opportunity, and nurture is way more stronger than nature. What your environment is when you grow up into is what you become. And your experiences in life, that's why everybody inside this room is different than the other, because we all had different experiences in life. And I see my time with that, and I strongly urge that you vote for the negative of today's debate.
Good evening again, our honored and distinguished guests, our honorable wise men, which are the adjudicators, and the lovely audience we have here today. I'd like to thank my opponents for coming out and providing some clash today, and my wonderful partner who has just been by my side the whole time, and I want to thank you, Mr. Young. All right, without any further ado, I am the Prime Minister, and this is when I give my voters on why I have won, or the affirmative has won this case today. But it seems to be a lack of education in the room, so I'm just going to take a minute to educate a little bit on what this statement that I made today. I know this is going to chunk into my voters' time, but I feel like education is more important than a false statement or a false truism that you might have in your head. So the Black Panther Party was a social group who took initiative for their own community and all they asked was for the government to support them in their 10-point plan. Now these 10 points was to improve the well-being and lifestyle of their fellow African Americans. Now, no way that I come up here and misrepresent or insult my brother and nation that which called the Black Panther Party, but I am here as a representation, a leading arm, an extended hand from history, if you will, to say that it's time for accountability, Black brothers and sisters. And I'm going to, without any further ado, I'm going to go into my voters. Voter number 1, he said that we will do anything, which is false, because we wouldn't even ride the bus because it was supporting the system that was oppressing us. We wouldn't do anything. We would not do anything because this is not necessarily, I want to hit this point and then go back and tell you how it tied together. He said something about positivity and how positive, who was to say what's positive, but we know what's productive for us. Now, that speaks to even our poorest Americans that you wouldn't do anything. You would probably do what's most productive to you. One would think that we would do what's most productive to us, which brings me to my voter number 2, is that our history was not destroyed. It's never destroyed as long as there is a melanin filled living vessel on this American soil. Our history is never destroyed. It may be covered up, it may be a little bit harder to find, but as long as you have breath in your body and articulation in your tongue, your history will always be passed down. Voter number 3. Now, I'm sorry, but when he gave his voters, Mr. Terrence said that we all have black ladies, they had black doctors, they had black physicians. This is exactly one of our contention number 3, the lack of black leadership. There are black doctors, there are black lawyers, there are black teachers, but are they in our community showing our children how to do better? Where's the initiative that our black leaders must take, that our physicians, our doctors that you speak of? That was definitely voter number 3. And then voter number 4 is that the reason, just to bring up a few tying things together, the reason that this young man is handing you a mixtape is that's the only talents that he knows how to use to make himself elevated in any kind of way. So this goes back to the non-using of the YMCA and the little leagues and the getting them involved in different things and her involved in different things that could be productive, not necessarily positive, but productive to self and to kin. Voter number 5 is that if we are consciously aware, we can have a conversation here face to face about what our fellow kinfolk do, that doesn't necessarily portray us in the most productive light. We can have a conversation is that, black males tend to favor the light-skinned female over the dark-skinned female, or our youth and our elders don't get along. If we can consciously have this conversation, we can consciously change our actions. Now, I don't know if you know what this conscious word means, but it means that you can call from recollection, you can create new idea, and you can plan for the future. Why are we the source of our own destruction when we can do all three to make us, build us? If we can have all this conversation on why are we so low and why are we so poor, why aren't we having the same conversation about why are we so productive and why are our kings and queens so high on the pedestal and in our institutions? These are the reasons why we are the sources of our own destruction.